Hi folks, HR Funk here. I've had the good fortune during the course of my life to attend some excellent firearms training. And not all that long ago, I attended several training sessions that were conducted by a gentleman who is a member of the Israeli Defense Force. And during one of those training sessions, he was training us on a technique that is used by the Israeli military for quickly neutralizing a hostile threat. Essentially, the technique that he was training us to use involved focusing on the target where you wanted a bullet to strike during presentation of the defensive handgun, and then without the use of sights, simply pointing the handgun toward the place on the target you want the bullet to strike and squeezing the trigger. And though he never used the term specifically, what he was describing is what is generally called target focus. More recently, I attended another training session that was conducted by a U.S. Army Special Forces soldier, and during that course of instruction, he also said that Army Special Forces has adopted the concept of target focus, which is something I've heard from another U.S. Army Special Forces soldier as well. The other place where we commonly hear the concept of target focus being used is when it comes to the use of micro red dot optics on handguns. Proponents of micro red dot optics talk about focusing on the target and bringing the red dot onto the target where you want the bullet to strike and then pressing the trigger. So, as someone who was brought up in what I'll call the traditional defensive shooting school, which harkens back to Jeff Cooper's flash sight picture, I've never felt completely comfortable with this idea of target focus, but there are so many people who talk about its merits that I thought maybe it's worth exploring in the context of a video. So in this video, I'm going to look at the idea of target focus. I'm going to be employing those techniques that we were taught during that training session that I was talking about, but I'm going to be comparing it to shooting with a flash sight picture. And I really want to try to determine if we are shooting faster by using the target focus method and if we're maintaining an acceptable level of accuracy when using that technique. I'm going to be firing several drills in order to figure that out, and I'll tell you about the drills and exactly how I'm going to conduct them right now. So during the course of this exercise, I'm going to shoot 3 different drills from 3 different distances, but I'm going to be using the same target for all of that shooting. I am going to be using different sighting techniques, however, when engaging each one of these targets. To begin with, from a distance of 3 yards, I'm going to start with the pistol in the holster, and I also am going to have a cover garment on because I want to add some real-world context to this. So I'll be drawing from concealment, and on the first target, I'm going to come up from that distance of 3 yards, focus solely on the target. I'm not going to use any sights whatsoever, and try to focus on the nose of this target, and I want to try to put a bullet right onto the target's nose using the so-called target focus technique. On the next target, I'm going to be doing the exact same drill, but this time, while using target focus, I am going to be employing the red dot optic on my Masada Slim and attempting to, once again, put the bullet right on the nose with the use of that micro red dot optic. On the third and final target, the drill is going to be the same, but this time around, I'm going to be using a flash sight picture. Now, since the Masada has the micro red dot attached to it, and this micro red dot cannot be turned off. The Mechanic is one of these red dot sights that's on all the time, so I am going to switch to a different handgun for my flash sight picture shooting. That's going to be my Springfield Armory Hellcat, which has sights that are very well made for something like a flash sight picture. And these 2 handguns are similar enough that I don't think the fact that I'm not using the same handgun for each and every target is going to be that big of a deal. I don't think there's going to be that much difference in their shooting or recoil characteristics or anything else that it's really going to sway the test one way or the other. But again, that's going to be the 3-yard drill. Then I'm going to move back to a distance of 5 yards, and from 5 yards, once again, using each of the sighting techniques that I just explained, I am going to be, once again, drawing from concealment and firing controlled pairs into the body of the target. I'll do that 3 times with each handgun from that distance of 5 yards. Then I'm going to go back to 7 yards, once again employing the 3 sighting techniques. I'm going to be firing 5 shots into the body. All of the shooting is going to be initiated with my shot timer, and I'm going to keep track of the elapsed time from the signal to fire until I have fired out all the shots in that drill. For the first and second stage, the 3-yard and the 5-yard stage, I'm going to look at the times that I get and then average them. And obviously for the final stage, there's just going to be one time that I'll look at. And I am then also going to be looking at the accuracy that I achieve with each one of these sighting techniques to see exactly what we can determine with regard to their effectiveness as well as their speed. Now, I realize that really to get a true idea of how well this works, I would need multiple shooters so I could look at a group and see how the group does, and I don't have that. So we're going to be looking at it with just me as the shooter, but hopefully by the time I'm done, at least we can get an indication as to the effectiveness of the various sighting techniques, their accuracy, and the time difference, if any, that we see when they're employed. So here we go, folks. First up is 3 shots. These are going to be 3 headshots from a distance of 3 yards, first off using target focus. .77 seconds, 1.77 for the first shot. .59 for shot number 2. And 1.69 for shot number 3, but that shot was very low. Hopefully that's going to show up on the camera. Now I'll move on and be doing the same drill this time around with the micro red dot optic, but still using target focus. Two seconds even. .02, but I pulled that one low. And 2.92, and in case you couldn't tell, that time when I came up, I couldn't find the dot, so it took a little bit longer to get that thing zeroed in. And last up will be 3 headshots from 3 yards using a flash sight picture with my Springfield Armory Hellcat. .82 seconds. .88 seconds. And 1.74 seconds. And on back we go to a distance of 5 yards for some controlled pairs. From here, I'm once again going to start on the signal from my shot timer, draw and fire 2 shots into the body. I'll do this 3 times. For the first 3 pairs, I will be going with no input from the sights whatsoever, using strictly target focus. For the second 3 pairs, I'll be using target focus with the red dot optic. And for the last 3 pairs, I will be using just the flash sight picture with my Springfield Armory Hellcat. Let's see how this round goes. .18 seconds, 2.18. .17 seconds. And 2 seconds even. Two 2.48 seconds. Three 3.01 seconds. 3.01. 2.42 seconds. Two point zero five. 2.05. 2.09. 1.97 for that last pair. And for the last stage, it's going to be back to a distance of 7 yards, and from that distance, I'm going to be firing 5 shots in a row into the target's body. Four 4.19 seconds, 4.19 seconds. 4.21 seconds, 4.21 seconds. 4.08 seconds, 4.08. And as you can see, I have come back to the shop to analyze the results of my shooting drills. But before I get into that analysis, I want to talk about something you see periodically on YouTube, especially with regard to something like target focus or the effectiveness of micro red dot optics. Many times the person who is making the presentation will be decked out in essentially full competition gear, complete with a competition holster which positions their handgun perfectly for the draw and presentation to the target. They will have a full-size handgun with a full-size grip that fits their hand well and points naturally for them. They will have their preferred red dot optic affixed to that handgun, and usually there will be a cursory statement that's made along the lines of, I'm using my competition rig today, but this is the same thing I do with my concealed carry handgun every day. Which is fine, but then they proceed to show the effectiveness of their target focus technique or the micro red dot optic or whatever using that full competition setup. And I think sometimes this gives viewers the false impression of what they can expect if they're employing that particular technique in a defensive situation. The reason I conducted my tests the way I did today is because I wanted it to be a little bit more applicable to the defensive concealed carry licensee as opposed to the competitive shooter. The handguns that I was using were specifically small handguns with small grips that don't necessarily give you that perfect grip angle and perfect presentation to the target. I was using a concealment holster that doesn't necessarily allow a perfect grip when I'm grasping the handgun. In fact, this particular holster actually impairs my ability to get a good grip until I start to take the handgun out of the holster. Then I can complete my grip. I obviously had a concealment garment that had to be removed in order to present the handgun. So again, I think this is a little bit more realistic look at the various shooting techniques that I'm discussing today than if I was out there with a full-size handgun and a different holster. In fact, had I used the full-size Masada with its circle dot reticle in the MRDS that's made by Hilux and presented it from a different sort of holster, I might have gotten different results than I got using the smaller Masada 9S in my Hellcat and using it in the drills the way that I did. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at those results. Starting to look at the results that I got from my shooting drills, I have marked the shots from each of the first drill. That, as a reminder, was the 3 headshots from a distance of 3 yards. And the first target is my target focus target. And with this one, we can see there are 2 shots that were pretty good. Again, I'm looking right at the tip of his nose and trying to put bullets on there. I've got 2 of them that are great headshots, but then this one that is very low. And this is one of the things that bothers me about target focus, especially if you don't get that absolutely perfect presentation, or the pistol just doesn't set up in your hand quite right that time around. You can get shots that wander away from the group. The average time for these 3 shots was 1.68 seconds. So the time was very good, but this accuracy concerns me. Now, everything has to do with context. The gentleman who was teaching the course that I talked about, who was a member of the Israeli Defense Force, and even the Special Forces soldiers that I was talking about, are not going to get too worried about a shot that goes down here and wanders away from this group once in a while. In fact, I got the impression from the gentleman who was teaching the course from IDF that if you have an occasional miss, that's not that big of a deal as long as you get the bad guy before he has a chance to detonate or whatever else. For armed citizens or for law enforcement officers in the United States, we can't really run that risk, because if one bullet wanders away from the group and misses our bad guy, that is a potential serious liability for us. We might injure or kill somebody we didn't intend to, and obviously there are repercussions for that. Moving over to the next target, this is the one where I was using the micro red dot optic. And on this one we can see that I have a much tighter group. And when I look at these 2 and I see the difference between having that reference from the sighting device and not, I definitely prefer this. Now the downside to the micro red dot is the fact that my average time for these 3 shots was 2.31 seconds. So that is roughly 33 100ths of a second slower than with the target focus alone. 33 100ths of a second, is that enough difference to really matter? I'll show you what that looks like in a video right here. So you can decide for yourself how much of a downside this time is as opposed to this side. Coming over to the target, or the flash sight picture rather, we can see these 3 shots are very good. My time is only slightly slower. The time difference here is 13 100ths of a second, or just over 1/10 of a second, and I'm getting very good shots. And again, the flash sight picture is what I've been using for a long time. It works very well for me, and the only reason I am looking at these other type of sighting techniques is because when I was shooting this, I was wearing my shooting glasses that have the vision correcting lenses to give me that good sharp sight picture. Normally, when I'm going about my day, I'm not wearing glasses to correct my vision, and I'm starting to rely more and more on the micro red dots because I get just about the same level of accuracy with the micro red dot that I get with the iron sights, and I don't have to concern myself with not wearing some sort of vision correction in order to accomplish that. I've said before that if I still had my 20, 25, maybe 30-year-old eyes, I would not be considering anything else for a sighting technique. I would still just be shooting iron sights, and that would be that. But I don't have my eyes from those ages anymore, which once again, as I look at these 3 different techniques, is why I am moving more and more toward the micro red dots. For the second stage, firing controlled pairs from a distance of 5 yards, I have marked the shots with green stickers. Once again, we see with the target focus, I have got 3 very nice heart shots here, and then I've got 3 that are down here, probably in the intestines, that are not going to be immediately very effective. So again, we see this tendency for target focus to work well when it works, but it just doesn't always work. The average time for those controlled pairs with the target focus was 2.12 seconds. And moving over to the micro red dot optic sight, or micro red dot optic target, we can see a much, much tighter group. All heart shots, lung shots, this one just below the heart, but I certainly wouldn't want to get hit right there. So very, very good shots with the micro red dot optic. And the time is closer this time. We're now looking at half a second difference between the target focus and the micro red dot optic, but much, much better accuracy with that slightly greater time penalty. Looking at the flash sight picture, we see a group that is almost as tight as I was getting with the micro red dot. Everything is a heart or lung hit on this target. And the average time was actually the fastest of all 3 with the flash sight picture. This is 2.04 seconds on average to fire off those controlled pairs. Again, if I still had my younger eyes, this is the way I would continue to shoot, and I would not be thinking about these other techniques. But I notice, looking at the accuracy once again, that the compromise really is the micro red dot optic. It's given me some reference to be able to put accurate shots on target, but I'm just not able to do it as fast as I can do it with the flash sight picture. One thing about the time for the first drill is the fact that I had one slow shot that really affected this time. Had it been about the same as the others, which were both hovering right around 2 seconds or just over, then the difference between the target focus and the micro red dot optic on drill number 1 would have only been about 1/4 of a second. So I had one slow shot that really skewed that. And again, the times are very, very good for the flash sight picture. And for the third and final drill, I have the shots marked with the yellow stickers. And this is the drill where we really start to see target focus kind of come off the rails, at least with me as the shooter. And we see the shots all stayed on the target somewhere, but of these 5 shots, I have one that looks like it's a pretty effective shot, and then I have a lot that aren't effective shots. The time for this was 4.19 seconds, which was the fastest of all 3 times. And just so you know, my focus, using target focus, was this line right here in the middle of the heart. That's what I was trying to point the pistol at and put bullets right on there, and you can see that they are virtually all over the target. And again, this is only from 7 yards. And as distance increases, this is only going to become, at least with me shooting, less and less precise. Moving over to the micro red dot, as distance increases, this is where the micro red dot really starts to show its advantages. It's been holding tight groups all the way along, and it has the absolute tightest group this time around. And the time on average, well, not on average, but the time for those 5 shots was 4.21 seconds. So we're talking about 2/100ths of a second slower, which is virtually nothing. It's inconsequential, that very short difference in time. And to get this type of accuracy with that time is why, once again, I'm moving toward using the micro red dot. We have a still very good group using the flash sight picture. The average time was 4.08 seconds, so this was the fastest time this time around for that drill from 7 yards. And I still have accuracy that is almost as good as the micro red dot. So when we look at the flash sight picture, and considering this was devised by Colonel Jeff Cooper, and it was devised for gunfighting, it was not devised for competition, it wasn't devised to make people feel good about themselves when they're shooting on the range or anything else. It was devised to help people stay alive when someone else is trying to kill them. And we see that borne out all these decades later, at least with me as a shooter, still being a very effective technique for getting shots on target, albeit in my case with the use of vision correcting lenses. So I think to sum everything up, with target focus in a military context or maybe a competitive context, there is probably some merit to it, especially for members of the military where they're just trying to get shots on target as quickly as they can to stop someone who is trying to kill them. I could see some merit to this. If you have an occasional miss in a military context, it's certainly not desirable, but I also don't think it's unheard of. I think it's probably safe to say that there are still more misses than hits in a military firefight. Again, not something that you want to have happen, but I think that's probably realistic. When we look at the micro red dot optic, I think there is promise to this. I continue to work and continue to try to develop, and as I shot my way through this, with the exception of that one very slow shot that I had in drill number 1, we see that the times aren't bad. They're not that far behind the others. And for the level of precision that I'm getting without some sort of vision correction, without having to worry about not being able to see the sights in a dark environment or whatever, I continue to think this is the route that I'm going to be going. Still, as I said before, Colonel Cooper was kind of like E.F. Hutton. If he spoke, I listened, and a lot of other people listened too, and there's still very much merit to the idea of a flash sight picture. If you're young enough and your vision is good enough to continue to use your iron sights with a flash sight picture, I still think that's the way to go. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off your purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember the discount code from Hot Munitions. If you go to Hot Munitions, you can use my discount code there, which is HRFUNK10, and that'll save you 10% off your purchase from Hot Munitions. Last but not least is Target sponsor for the channel. All these targets were provided by Targetsonline. Go to Targetsonline, check out their website, and see if they have anything in their inventory that's going to meet your target needs. See you next time, folks, and until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.